Hello and welcome back, everybody. I'm Dan John, and this is the DanJohnUniversity.com podcast. This is episode 258. Each and every week, I sit down here and I answer your questions. If you have questions, send them to us, and the address is podcast@DanJohnUniversity.com. I'm happy to answer any questions you have. We have a good selection this week's episode. Not as many questions as usual, but I think they're pretty good. So let's get started right away. We have a question from a guy named Dan. What a nice name. Must be a wonderful person. I would like to layer the armor building complex and the Humane Burpee program I have heard you speaking of, rotating 2 days, and it says ACM 1 day, HP next week, 2 days HP, 1 day ABC, which already confuses me, but I'll do my best to answer. Because I'm layering in nonstop of other program, my goal is to use this as a way to get some extra reps and to get my heart rate before I walk, maybe lighter weight, 5 to 10 rounds. Does this make any sense, or should I save the armor building complex and the Humane Burpee as a separate program at some point? All right, so I have a new book out, The Armor Building Formula, available at danjohnuniversity.com/bookstore, where I go in what I think you should do. But your idea of going for a walk after, and I'm guessing maybe this was done on a phone or something like that. That might be the confusion, HP versus HB. If you think that doing complexes helps, and I do, and then following them by a walk would be good for fat loss, I think you're on the right track there. What you're going to get is a classic power law. You're going to have a lot of intensity and then this long tail. Walking is not very high intensity, and I really do think that walking is probably the missing ingredient for most people's stuff. But let's make walking work better, and the way we can do that is by getting people to exercise first. The armor building complex, for those who don't know what we're talking about, is when you take 2 kettlebells. Generally, I recommend the 24s for most men, and then you can just scale it however you think, or whatever equipment you have, even asymmetrical bells, whatever. Just do it. It's 2 double cleans, 1 double press, and then 3 double kettlebell front squats. Generally, I like to go I go, you go. That's the best way. That's the way we started. People don't train with other people, so we've tried every minute on the minute, a couple other variations, and frankly, they all work just fine. I think once you build up past 30 rounds of it, you're not really getting much of the benefits anymore. But if you do 30 rounds of the ABC, that's 90 squats, and that's a lot of squats. My thrower the other day, she did 40 in her warm-up, 40 rounds of the ABC. It was 120 squats to warm up, and I'm thinking to myself, this is why she's so good. She's a very hardworking young lady. The Humane Burpee, the traditional, original 15 swings, kettlebell swings, followed by 10 goblet squats, followed by 10 push-ups, and then you go 15 swings again, 15 swings the whole way, 9 goblet squats, 8 push-ups, 15 swings, 7, if I screwed it up. You go on the goblet squats and push-ups, you go 10, 10, 9, 9, 8, 8, 7, 7, 6, 6, all the way down to 1, 1. You end up doing 150 kettlebell swings, 55 goblet squats, and 55 push-ups, which is a pretty good workout. And when you bounce up and go for the walk after that, by the way, I find set 7, the 7 set, 15 swings, 7 goblet squats, 7 push-ups. That's the personal hard one for me. I don't know what it is. I'm sure it's a math thing, but all the excitement of doing it is kind of lost after rounds, the 10s, the 9s, the 8s. 7 is brutal. And once you get to the 6s, you kind of see it, you kind of see the finish line coming, so it's not so bad maybe. I don't know. If you were to alternate, like the ABC, week 1, you're going to do it Monday and Friday, and the Humane Burpee on the Wednesday. Week 2, the Humane Burpee on Monday and Friday, and the ABC on Wednesday, and follow it with the walk. If you can keep doing it, I think, from what I know from the research side of things, which, is all over the place, the experience side of things, which has a little more clarity, and just common sense, I think you would have a really good program that would nudge you into the direction of fat burning. Now, fat burning starts and finishes in the kitchen. You also need 8 to 9 hours of sleep every night. You need to drink copious amounts of water. Today's beverage is a sugar-free lemonade with sun tea that I made. Delicious. I'm drinking a whole bunch of that because I like sun tea, and lemonade gives it a nice taste. But, how many of these should I drink? Well, I don't know, 8, 9, 10 glasses of that a day. I've heard a gallon a day. I don't care. Drink water, get your sleep, eat protein and vegetables at every meal, and don't eat crap. Don't eat junk food. If you do that with the exercise program you have, just what you have, if you take care of the nutritional side and the sleep side, I think you're going to find a lot of success doing this idea. Having said that, the ABC and the Humane Burpee are tough. They're tough little workouts. So, be logical and be ready to make a good adaptations as you go along. Thank you, Dan. Fun question. All right, thank you. Our next question is from Greg. And Greg says this: my name is Greg. I'm a 51-year-old economics teacher. Great. I work out daily. I complete a 20 or 40-day workout program, then switch programs. Currently, I'm on day 30 of kettlebell easy strength. I'm wondering your thoughts on the benefits of cold showers. Are cold showers worth taking for flushing the muscles of toxins, reduce muscle soreness, and accelerated fatigue recovery? Greg, you're an economics teacher. Cost to benefit ratios. From what I've read, and I'm leaning heavily into the work of Brad Pillen. He's the one who wrote Eat, Stop, Eat. And if I said his last name wrong, I apologize. He has a great book on heat. And he tells us in that book that saunas and ice baths have the same heat reactive protein situation in your body. The difference is when you take an ice bath, it's real hard to stay in there for a long time. When you take a sauna, it's not so hard to stay in there a long time. There is some interesting research about cardiovascular and sauna. And the interesting thing about the cardiovascular work and the sauna is that it does seem to help. This is a Finnish study where they did people who did 4 days a week of sauna versus no saunas and one sauna. There was some markers that showed that it helped with some cardiovascular issues. One of the issues with both ice baths, saunas, steam rooms, and all this stuff is that the miracle stuff always gets pushed by the companies that sell the equipment. It's like when Nautilus machines were out. Nautilus machines, according to Nautilus manufacturers, was the only piece of equipment any smart person would use. Kindly, I disagree. Now, right here on this side of my head is my sauna. I also do ice baths also. From what we learned in the 1970s, and I was fascinated by this before I got a really interesting other thing. Contrast, I still think, is the best. Now, when I was young and contrast bathing kind of became a thing, that is a steam or sauna followed by an ice shower or a plunge, ice plunge. Steam shower, plunge, steam shower, plunge. So when I first heard this from the Bulgarians, I was, of course, I was all in, and that's how I showered every day for years. Later, I heard somebody tell me that they had spoken to the Bulgarian coaches, and the reason they did those contrast showers is all that they had was the hot water, the saunas, the steams, and ice baths. And so they just turned it into fact that was the best thing to do. If all you have is a single 16 kilogram kettlebell, that's all you have, and you decide, and you're on, you're in prison, you're on a deserted island, and you decided to have the best body in the world, if you took that 16K kettlebell seriously and trained on it and trained on it and trained on it, you would get, all your dreams would come true. So my point on this is important, Greg, and I hope you're hearing it, is that if all you've got is a sauna and a shower, and you do what I've done my whole life, back back at the turn of the millennium, I was doing hot tub, ice shower, hot tub, ice shower. I had set up a outdoor shower next to my hot tub. So I'd get hot, jump out, turn on the hose water, freeze, jump back in, heat up, heat up, freeze, heat up, freeze, heat up, freeze. And I thought it was wonderful. I think overall about recovery this. Anytime, and this is all the tools you're talking about. And you said flushing muscles of toxins. Well, I don't know. It's like when I hear about people doing detoxes. Well, that's the liver's job, and you don't have to. That's the reduce muscle soreness. We also know from some research we don't want to reduce the soreness. That soreness is telling the body to keep adapting. Accelerated fatigue recovery. That's the $1 million question. I think this. Anytime you circle recovery as an important item in your training, I think you're better off. Phil Maffetone does a nice job of this, training, recovery, training, recovery, training, recovery. And if you're not looking at your training recovery circle, spiral, what is it, helix, you're missing something very important. I'm glad to hear this question, Greg, because most of my questions are about, training. But I do think sometimes we miss the boat on ignoring recovery. When Wim Hof first became famous, of course, the kettlebell community instantly fell in love with it. I've read up, in fact, on one of the Wim Hof books, I have a blurb on the cover. I'm a big fan of the ice bathing. I think it's great. But I'm also a big fan of sauna. I'm also a big fan of hot tubs. Getting back to the point, anything you do to take recovery seriously is going to help you long term. I hope that helped. Thank you so much. Well, we got a question from Andrew. I'm getting a lot of questions from Andrews lately. I don't know if there's an Andrew convention or if just a lot of people named Andrew listen in. I've recently started shadowing as a coach at my gym to eventually become a volunteer coach, which I'm excited for. However, one of the classes I shadow happens right before my own training. I'm an Olympic lifter. So I coach from 5 to 6 and then lift from 6 to 7:30. This means that by the time I start lifting, I haven't eaten for a while. One of the things I'm considering is doing a really light, healthy snacks or carbs during my training that won't make me sick or bloated, but also keep me tied up until my post-workout meal. I was wondering if you have experienced this as well and what you would suggest for snacks or meal timing when you may be busy for a few hours. Well, it's interesting you say this because I've had there's two periods in my life that I seem to train best at of the day. And for me, it's before I eat breakfast is probably for most of my goal sets, exercise and fasted, which is, which I do. I eat my last meal at probably 6, 7, dinner. And then I try not to eat anything. And then I fast. I wake up at 6, 7. That's a 12-hour fast. And then I don't eat until I train. I do drink coffee. It is funny. Somebody said, well, you drink coffee, so that's not fasting. Yeah, right. Yeah. If you, phrase I've never heard. I got fat drinking black coffee. Yeah. Is that, it was the black coffee. I drink black coffee. I work out hard. I do my walk after, and then I try to eat a protein and veggie rich meal. Sometimes I really try to overdo the protein numbers. Sometimes I try to overdo the number of veggies. The other period that works good for me is the 3 o'clock period, the after school period. Obviously, a lot of us who grew up training when school finished, 3 o'clock was just a great time. The nice thing about training in the afternoon for me was I ate lunch, say at noon, and I had plenty of time to digest and rest. And by the time practice came around, I was fine. You are pushing this a little bit later. Personally, I see two directions you can go. First off, you can do something like Nick Horton, the Olympic lifting coach, recommends in his great article, Vodka, Intermittent Fasting and Olympic Lifting or something like that. I have a copy of it here that I just love. Well, he was trying to really lean out for a wedding and lean out for a competition. And he decided to have these massive daily fasts. And I always thought it was a great idea. So with your example, which, you know, I mean, it would be tough, but, you know, after 7:30, his first recommendation would to drink some chocolate milk. There's nothing amazing about chocolate milk, folks. Years ago, maybe about 20 years ago, a company was trying to copyright 75% carbohydrate and 25% protein. And then somebody pointed out famously, well, that's what chocolate milk is. Exactly. A lot of people get the benefits of chocolate milk. Now, let me double check this. As a volunteer coach, you know, chocolate milk is relatively inexpensive. And then you drink the chocolate milk the second you finish your workout, okay? And then you go home and you eat everything in sight. And that's what you do on workout nights. It's one meal a day. It's massive amount of food. You shovel it down. Keep the women and children away from your mouth, okay? You know, you fight with the dog over the kibbles and bits. I'm not a huge believer in post or pre-workout nutrition. You're going to say, well, easy strength for fat loss. Yeah, but it's protein and veggies. The second thing I want you to consider is, first off, make sure you know what the difference between hunger and starvation is. If you're merely hungry before your Olympic lift, I think that's okay. Now, if you really are so hungry that it's impacting your lifting, I like the idea of a clean, healthy snack. The downside of healthy snacks is they're so much harder to store and prepare than unhealthy ones. I've tried, man, I got to tell you folks, in Mass Made Simple, I recommend peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, and people got on me because that's not healthy. Well, it's only because I tried really hard to make hard-boiled eggs and cans of tuna work. And I got to tell you, force feeding a can of tuna, dry tuna, down your throat before a workout is harder than high rep squats. And trying to break open and eat 3 or 4 hard-boiled eggs, and I've tried every method in the world. I love it when you see people on TV, they crack open a hard-boiled egg and it just pops off perfectly. In my life, they just rip to shreds, or they get stuck to the lining of the egg. It is hard to swallow down 4 hard-boiled eggs. So eating clean is hard. It is. So that's why, even though I'm not a huge fan of smoothies, I think smoothies are great. I just think they're so overdone. I was in the mall the other day, and they're charging $16 for a smoothie in the mall. Now I look at the ingredients and it's like, yeah, that's it. Basically you just ate a garden, but $16 is a lot of money. But if you can make your own smoothies, your own drinks, I think that's always been the best option for most people. The protein I use when I mix drinks, I have the one called Orgain. It's the PEA powder that I get from Costco when I'm blending. That's the one I use. I have a number of different ones. I've been trying this new one that's a lemonade flavor, and that's the reason I have my drink today. This is half Sun Tea and half lemonade flavored protein drink, and the Sun Tea does a good job killing that terrible aftertaste that lemonade flavored protein has. Delicious. I think if you have a blender at work, by the way, I always recommend gyms have a microwave and a blender. By the way, don't let anybody ever use your blender or your microwave, because they'll never clean it. There is a machine called a Vitamix. It's a lot more expensive, but you drop in whole tomatoes, you drop in whole oranges with the rinds and everything. You go like that, and I've had on that. There's a gazpacho recipe that had, I would say, about 80 pounds of. It was amazing how much vegetables went in there. You throw in whole lemons for a gazpacho, whole seeds and rind and combined. Who'd have thunk? A Vitamix, where you do something like that. A protein mix with a smoothie, if you can do something like that. If you can microwave something that you brought from home, before you bring it, chop, You want your chicken. If this is a normal piece of chicken you might eat, I'd quarter that. Make the pieces as small as you can, because you are trying to, and that's going to sound horrible to the moms and grandmothers listening, but you want to shovel your food down when you're doing a situation like you're in. If I mentally was to go through my list, I would say this. First, I would say fast. Don't eat it all. 2, it might be something very simple. A carton with chocolate milk, a protein drink, something like that. 3rd would be that family of the smoothies and the fancier protein drinks with more ingredients in it. After that, probably a meal that's been pre-sliced, pre-chopped. Hopefully it's got some vegetables in there. And then after that, way down the list would be fast food, and try to keep yourself from going down that route. I hope that was helpful. Real quickly, I'm just not a huge believer in pre-workout nutrition. Tom Fahey, the great professor, and he was the editor of, I think it was Iron Man for a long time. He would share with me these great studies all over the world. And he told me one time that a guy my size would probably only need 10 to 20 grams of protein pre-workout. And he said the weird thing is it's just not that much. For most of our listeners, they're probably in the 10 range. We're looking at 1 hard-boiled egg, a third of a protein drink, at least the ones I have. That's just not very much. Post-workout, of course, I like to hold on to the fast a little longer post-workout, just for the fat burning aspects of it. And I think it's always a good idea to have your body fast a little bit every day. But if you're in a situation like you are, where you're having a long day and then you coach, which can be exhausting, and then you train, a little pick-me-up is fine. Just make sure it's kind of go down the list. It's like my list about exercise and equipment. Is it easy is number 1. Is it, what equipment do you have? Do you know the lifts? How easy it is to teach the lifts? That's kind of like my little mental matrix. It's got to be easily accessible to you. You've got to really be able to get it down rather quickly, and it can't be a hassle of any kind. Peeling hard-boiled eggs, and someone's going to write about those pre-peeled ones, but I don't know if I trust those personally. But peeling hard-boiled eggs, if you bring a raw piece of meat to work and you say you're going to grill it. By the way, I used to have a George Foreman barbecue grill in my old gym, and it's funny as I say it, I'm going, why don't I have one now? I think every gym should have a fridge, a freezer, a barbecue, a microwave, a Vitamix, a blender, because you're always cooking. You show up to work with your raw steak, and you plug in your George Foreman grill and you throw it on there. I love the idea. I do. I think it's a great idea. My thought is you're going to have utensils, and you have to clean that thing up, and it's going to stay hot, all those other issues down the line. The ease of consumption is something you have to consider. Gets us back to smoothies, prepared protein, and simply forgetting it, just fasting. I know that was all over the place, but those were honest answers. Thank you. Got a question from Michael. And Michael says, I was in the worst condition of my life a year ago, feeling weak and lethargic and unable to do much exercise without feeling lower back pain and sore hips. My hips were so tight and stiff, it hurt to do much of anything. I got a dog a year ago, and I've been walking her about a mile every morning and evening for the past year. Stu McGill's book, where he talks about the miracle of walking before dinner every meal. A 10-minute walk before every meal. It's great. I picked up some kettlebells along the way, and I've increased my strength by doing box squats, deadlifts, and shoulder presses 3 to 4 times per week, in addition to the walking. I'm doing much better, and my hips are better, but still have some stiffness and soreness, especially in the left side. I have gotten into a 15-minute per day hip opening routine, and it seems to be helping. I would love to progress further and start kettlebell swinging, but I find if I do too much at all, 2 sets of 5 swings with a 12 kilo kettlebell, my lower back hurts. I've watched videos on my technique and I think I'm doing it correctly, but the pain is enough to make me stop. I have pulled my lower back out on several occasions over the years, and I think there may need to be some way to strengthen that area without much pain. What would you advise to help safely strengthen my lower back so I can progress to swinging and other exercises? I feel like my hips and lower back are the main areas that are making it difficult to progress. Well, the first thing I'd say, let's just not do swings. Okay, let's just mentally say, let's just put it out of the equation. All right, you've had injuries, your technique is solid, but you're not getting there. So let's just mentally erase it, okay? There's a couple exercises. Now, I feel like I'm hedging into medical intervention here, and I apologize, but let me just give you a few ideas that have worked in my career and for people I know. First off, when it comes to hips, I don't think there's a better way to do it than Original Strength, Tim Anderson's great program. I have his booklet on Original Strength for hips. I also have his longevity. I probably have 10 of his books or more. But the one he has on total hips really helps me. So for me, there's an exercise called rocking that helps a lot. And then the whole segmental roll family and, of course, egg rolls help me with my hips. Now, I have titanium hips, so this is very important to me. And, of course, the last thing, and I do this huge amounts of my training, the cross crawls. Right hand, left knee, left hand, right knee. You can skip doing it. You can sprint doing it. You can march in place. We have a bunch of ways we do it. So I think you not only just need hip mobility and hip work, but I also think you need to kind of teach your body to sing together, right shoulder with your left hip, left shoulder with your right hip, and everything else. So first recommendation is look into Original Strength, especially on the hip stuff. Number 2, if you can't swing, do hip thrusts hurt you? See, I like the hip thrust. Today in the gym, we had someone comment that, when they first heard me say that, hip thrusts are so much faster and easier to teach versus a kettlebell swing, they thought I was crazy because I'm a kettlebell instructor. And then they started doing hip thrusts, and it's like, oh, this is so much faster and easier. So that would be something I'd like you to think about instead of swings. The third thing, if you can do these. Now, you can do them on the floor. They're called they're sometimes called scorpions. Sometimes they have different names. But I'm face down the ground, and I'd raise both legs as high as I can. There's another exercise that's going to be called hyperextensions in the weight room, but cross your arms and you just bring yourself up. And of course, the third variation is Superman's, where you lay on the ground and you arch yourself up to that your hands, arms, and upper chest are off the ground, your feet, your legs, and some of your hips are off the ground. From there, you can move into the barbell or loaded hyperextension. Great exercise, a real favorite of mine. Sadly, it's gone out of fashion in the past few decades and generations, but it's a great exercise. So I'm just thinking out loud that I'm giving you exercises that I do every day, and I think they're a great idea. Let's just circle it and pin it for you. So Tim Anderson's Original Strength, at least look into it. The hip thrust, the hyperextension, and maybe the ab wheel. That's a nice little combination. Doing those 3 exercises. Now, obviously, just as I say that, I'm thinking out loud that if you can do suitcase carries, I don't know if you can or can't, but if you can do, those are one-handed farmer walks. That combination of the hip thrust, the hyperextension, Superman, whatever you choose, the ab wheel, and the suitcase carry might really get you to knit up that whole middle part of your body. And if you're working on mobility with your hips and lower back with your Original Strength, and then you're working on the orchestration of this part of your body with the hip thrust, the side bends, and the ab wheel and the suitcase carries, I think you might progress. Now, getting back to this thing called the swings. Put the swings mentally like that's something I want to get to. Let's make sure we got a great solid foundation here. I would like to see months instead of weeks of no issues with the lower back before we try to progress from here. I would even say, if that doesn't work, I would even say years over months with no lower back issues. For all the listeners, I mean, if I could get everybody just to do an overhead press variation, ab wheel, suitcase carry, hip thrust, and that Superman, that's not a bad program. That's not a bad program. I have a program here on the YouTube called The Perfect Program, and you'll see some of the variations that I said sort of show up in that workout too. I hope that helps, and let's get these back issues behind you, okay? All right, thank you. Okay, we have a question from Matt. Matt says this: I've trained most of my life feeling like I get much results. I'm a busy dad and would love something I could do that could help me be functional and proud of the way I look. At home, I've got a squat rack, trap bar, barbells, and 35 and 40-pound kettlebells. Just wish I could find a program that would help me achieve my goals. Well, you know, I have a book called The Armor Building Formula available at danjohnuniversity.com/bookstore. And there is a barbell program in there. And I'd like you to look at that, because the first couple of weeks of the program are just 2 exercises, and it later morphs into a third. But what's nice about it is that the program basically focuses on 15 to 30-minute workouts. The reason I push a barbell-only program for a lot of people when they feel stymied is when you go back to the barbell, and as I turn my head, I mean, I think that's what all those books basically tell you to do. But when you turn back to just the simple barbell and you do simple exercises like the clean and press and just some of the basics. In my bathroom down the hall here, I have 4 posters on the wall, and they're very nicely framed. They're Harry Pascal, who wrote the Bosco programs, and it's program 1, 2, 3, and 4 on the walls. And I'll have people use my bathroom here in the house, and they'll come out and go, especially people know weightlifting, they go, when did this come out? These are great workouts. And I say, 1954. And they'll go, oh, yeah, because the good stuff doesn't change. So listen, I like the trap bar. I like everything you have at the house. But sometimes when you're lost, it's probably best to simplify, okay? I would suggest doing something along the line of the barbell armor building formula. Do that and I give you, 16 to 20 weeks of training. I mean, that's plenty. And at the end of those 3-day-a-week workouts where you're doing the clean and press and the other exercises, and you're finishing up and you feel good, then assess and readdress. One of the things, you're a busy dad, and I've been there too. If you're a busy dad, you can't do 4-hour workouts, but you can do a 15-minute one. You can find that 20-minute workout. Had a conversation with a friend of mine today after the workout, and we were talking about, how I came up with some of my training ideas, and I didn't come up with them. I was forced to do it. I was working 2 full-time jobs. I was I was either an administrator and a professor, or I was a full-time coach and a professor. I was, or combinations of all that. I was busy and I didn't have a lot of time. And so what I learned to do, I'd get home at, 5:20, get dinner going because we had a menu. While the water was boiling, I'd go out and get a couple sets of deadlifts or incline bench press. I'd go back in and I'd set the next thing on, go outside and get my ab wheel in, come in and go out, get my pull-ups. And that's what easy strength became. When I had a chance, maybe after dinner, I'd go in the way back of our house and I'd do sled pulls, farmer walks, and maybe Highland Game training. The workouts were lasting 30 minutes in total. It might take 2 hours to get through it, but that's how I did it. If you try that armor building formula, the barbell program, I think you'll be very happy. I think it'll help out. And then after a couple months, we'll check back in. Let's see where we go from there. Thank you. We got a question. Pardon me. Okay, we have a question from George. He says this: I was excited when I got the Easy Strength Omni book. Oh, that's good to hear. I was looking forward to beginning Easy Strength, but then I got to the chapter where you told people my age should be doing a bodybuilding workout. Seriously, I have worked out since I was 13, and although I got strong, this is relative since I was kind of a hobbit, and it seems that the bodybuilding workouts left me with a lot of nagging injuries. I am thinking bench press, deadlift, etc. That's funny because I don't think of that as bodybuilding. That's a powerlifting workout. In my new book, Armor Building Formula, I talk about bodybuilding the way I understand bodybuilding. And it's from the tradition before Arnold, even though Arnold it's interesting because Arnold recommends in articles and even his book, which no one read, the 3-day-a-week program, which is the best part of the book. But basically, it's an easy strength approach to bodybuilding. It's the classic. It's what Reg Park did. It's what Steve Reeves did. It's what John Grimmick did. It's been around for the bulk of our time as weightlifting. I just want to get stronger, at least stay strong, eat well, and stay functional for as long as possible. What is the reason behind having over 56 people suffer through bodybuilding programs? I am already a great example of Vitruvian Hobbit man. Or the alternative, I'm not getting any prettier, and I could give a poop how my biceps look. Okay, why do I recommend bodybuilding past the age of 56? It's because the same reason I recommend mobility work, and it's the same reason I recommend fast twitch fiber work. I'm 67, man, and lean body mass does not want to stay on me anymore. My joints want to tighten up every time I fall asleep. When I sleep at night, if I fall asleep with my hand like this, it stays like that for most of the morning. So I have to remind myself when I sleep to make sure I keep my fingers open. If I sleep on one side all night, I won't be able to move the next day. I need to tumble and turn just so my joints don't break on me because my mobility is going south by the minute. And then the final thing is fast twitch muscle fiber. And fast twitch muscle fiber just seems to disappear. That's the ability to jump up on a curb or leap away from a rattlesnake. That's why. The research supports it. Obviously, I would like to see you reread that whole section again. What happens sometimes in my books, and we all do this, and there's nothing wrong with you, George. You're not an outlier. We all do this. We read books, especially books about self-improvement with only one character in mind, me, or you in your case. So when you got to that section, you missed the other sections on age, up to 17, 17 to 34, 35, 35 to 55-ish, and then plus 56 and above. I think you should really strength train hard between 35 and 55. And then after that, ideally, you let those reps go up a little bit higher and you slide over to hypertrophy work. You can do the exact same exercises. You could probably do the exact same exercises your whole life. Of course, I'm an Olympic lifter, so I've got but I have that one program where, you do front squats and cleans and presses. Well, I learned, so the original workout I actually did, besides making up my own from magazines, was when I went to Southwood Junior High and we did power clean, military, front squat, and bench press. Well, just those 4 exercises can give you an entire career. When we were in school, we did sets of 8 in those exercises, which is pretty high. Of course, once I slid over to college, my reps were 3 to 5 in those same exact exercises. If you want to stay strong, do those 4 exercises throughout the whole life. The only thing is, when you slide up to 56, you just go back on some of those exercises. Some of the time, you want to get your 8s, your 10s, your 12s in. And there's some research that says 16 to 20 reps helps too. But man, front squatting 20 reps is just something I'm just not interested in doing anymore. When we read something that at some level we don't agree with, very often it's hard to kind of sift the sand out of your eyes again after you read it. But the reason I recommend higher reps after 56 is that you are fighting lean body mass issues. Your muscles tend to want to disappear, and your fat is more than happy to increase in its size every day. Your mobility starts to get a little compromised. So you got to do mobility work and exercises that support mobility work. If you can do them, the overhead squat, the side bend, the dip, the chin up, hyperextensions, straight leg deadlifts. Those are all exercises that you can argue against each one of those, and I understand that. Those are all exercises that demand flexibility work. When I do my Olympic lifts, I don't think about flexibility. That weight is making me more flexible and more mobile. So that's my answer on that, George, and I hope it was helpful, okay? Well, listen, that's it for our questions for this week. As always, if you have questions, send them here to the podcast. And our address is podcast@danjohnuniversity.com. I enjoy answering these questions. It's fun, especially when I read people. If you have questions, send them to the podcast. And that address is podcast@danjohnuniversity.com. Each week, I love answering these questions. I enjoy the questions from the readers of my books or my magazine articles that have, deeper questions. But no matter what, you send them in. I'll do my best to answer each and every one. And until next time, let's all keep on lifting and learning. Thank you.